So when I start drawing eyes, the first thing that I really look at is what they call the canthor, or the tilt of the eye, the outside edge of the eyes. And it'll either tilt up, or it'll go straight across, or it'll tilt down. And so I start by establishing sort of a line or an arc that follows the flow of that canthor. And then I take a look at dividing that line correctly, because there's approximately one eye between the two eyes. Once I've established that, then I start looking at the shape. All of them have a tear duct. Some are short and narrow, some are fat and skin and rounded. And I look at that, and I look at the eye shape themselves. Some people have more arch on top. Some people have more arch on the bottom. Some eyes are very round and big, and some are very narrow. And you just really have to pay attention to the shape of your person's eyes. And then I look at the iris. The iris is a perfect circle. Most of the time it will either touch the bottom or it will sit right above it, but it will always go underneath the upper eyelid. Unless somebody's scared. That actually makes them look afraid if you show that upper part of the iris. Most people's are kind of medium sized. Some are really large, some are small. So we're going to start today by drawing an eye together. Just going to keep it at a regular normal canthor, and we're going to use a HB and 2 or 4H, whatever you have there on your table. And the first thing I'm going to look at is the shape of the tear duct. This is one of the things that most kids leave out repeatedly. So make sure that you are really looking, and some people's tear ducts are long and skinny and some are not. And then I'm just using the 2H here to very lightly start to put in some of the shadowing that happens in that upper eyelid. She has a fairly pronounced fold, little bit of a distance from the eye, depending on your age, your weight, those kinds of factors. Your race sometimes will influence what that fold looks like and how close it sits to the eye. But almost everybody has one, and almost everybody has a shadow that extends underneath the eyebrow to that inside corner of that eye. And so I'm just establishing a really light value in there. And then I'm going to take this across and look at the outside corner as well. And we get some more shadow that comes out of that fold. And it slowly changes. We get that gradient that we were working on at the beginning of the semester happening out in this corner. As it gets closer to that eyebrow on the outside edge, it gets lighter and lighter and closer to the white of the paper. And then right in close to the eye on that outside corner, there's a little shadow. And just the bulge of the eye, the roundness of the eye, puts a little bit of a light right in the center on this particular person of that upper eyelid. And so that's the area right now. I'm trying to leave it just a little bit lighter. So I'm going to darken the outside corner a little bit more. This is probably a good place to pause this and give it a shot. Try doing some of this shading. Now the lower lid, we can see the thickness of the lower lid. It's not just a line. The upper lid is a little bit disguised by the eyelashes and the angle of it, and we don't always see the thickness of it, but the lower lid, we see a little bit of that thickness. And so as I start putting some shadow, a little bit of shading under there, I am establishing the thickness of that lower eyelid. And you can see that little white strip that sits in there. And then a little bit of shading right around that inner eyelid and down below. We all have those. If you have allergies or didn't sleep well, that's when we get the baggy underneath the eyes or the dark underneath the eyes, kind of bruised look. This is a model, so shouldn't have a whole lot. And then I'm coming from the other side, and I'm going to bring down a little bit of shadow underneath. And that sets the eye back in the eye socket. The eye recedes in the face. It doesn't stick out like the nose or the mouth does. So we're putting a little shadow in there to set it back in the head. Now I'm going to go back with a little bit darker pencil. This is the HB. And the fold that is above the eye is fairly dark. And she's wearing really dark eyeshadow on top of it. So I'm going to darken this fold up a little bit, smooth it out a little bit so it's not quite so choppy. Add a little bit more value to it, to the area. And she's got kind of a little extra little wrinkle on the outside edge of her eyelid. So I'm going to add that extra little wrinkle that comes off the crease. The iris sits, it's a perfect circle. And part of it is hidden underneath that upper eyelid. Putting a little bit of a eyeliner on her, kind of a brown eyeliner. What she's wearing, so it's not a super dark line, but a little bit of value. And then the iris, like I said, it's a perfectly round circle, and part of it is above the eyelid, and then the pupil sits dead center of where that circle would be. And she's got a big shine on her iris, so instead of, or on her pupil, I mean, and her iris. So instead of having a perfectly circular pupil, it's got part of it sort of cut off by that. Now I'm going back with the 2H pencil again, and I'm adding some shading around the corners of the whites of the eyes to round the eyeball as it goes back in the head. And I'm going to use that same pencil and put a few little veins showing in the eye. You don't have to do that, but if you have somebody who has a lot of red veins and you want to show it, that's how you do it. Next thing I'm going to do is take a look at the eyebrow. I usually establish that lower edge first, kind of get the basic rough shape, and then just give myself some really light lines. And then I'm working with that darkest pencil. And you'll notice that I am not filling this in. It's not draw an outline and color it in. You end up with something that looks like a dead caterpillar on your face. It's hairy. And it's short hairs, and they grow in a specific pattern, and you need to take a look at the person. You know, a lot of times, especially guys, will have kind of wild eyebrows on the inside towards the nose. Older people, a lot of times, have really sparse eyebrows. They start to lose their eyebrows as they get older. And then the next step is to color in the iris. The iris has a dark ring around the outside of it. Doesn't really matter what color your eyes are. Everybody has a really dark ring outside of it. And you can see it better in lighter colored eyes. So I chose someone who had lighter eyes so we could sort of see that pattern in the eye easy. But that outside ring it's not just a line. It's a little bit thicker than that. And it's got these little short lines that come off of it that go in towards the pupil. And so all the way around this, I'm sort of creating this little pattern, and it's uneven. It's not like you could measure it because they're uneven, the length apart. but they all point in towards that pupil. And I'm using the HB pencil here. The lower part of the iris usually either touches the bottom lid or maybe slides slightly under it. A few people, it'll sit slightly above it. So you really have to pay attention, and you have to pay attention to how big it is in the eye. The biggest mistake that I see with the iris is people will draw just like odd, not circular lines on either side of that pupil, and it looks shaped odd because it's not circular. So you have to remember that it is a perfect circle. Coming out from the pupil, you have a similar situation where you have this fairly strong liney pattern that comes out from the pupil towards the outside. And then we have the basic color that goes over the top of all that. And there are very defined lines in the eyes. I refer to it as the firework. And so now I'm just adding some value, and I'm making sure that all of the lines I make are radiating from that pupil out or from the outside into the pupil to establish some value in the eye. The upper eyelid casts a shadow on the eye. So I'm going to go here and just add a little bit of a shadow across that upper eyelid. And a little bit more, I'm going to darken in a few of those short lines, just so we can see that pattern a little bit better. And I'm working my way around the shine on the left as I do this. I don't want to have to erase it out, so I'm trying to be very careful about going around it. You can erase it out if you have to. All right, so now we take a look at eyelashes. And eyelashes start, the upper ones start at the lid and go out. And I give it a little bit of a dip and a curl, and I lift my pencil off the paper as I reach the end of that line. I am not going to worry about whether I have them all the perfect length. They should be a little uneven, because our eyelashes are always growing in, so we always have different lengths of eyelashes. And then as you get towards the center of the eye, those eyelashes kind of cross over one another a little bit, and they go more straight up. And as you come to the inner corner of the eye, they begin to slant towards the nose. They get shorter in length. They're typically longer on the outside. Maybe a few little reflections of those eyelashes down there on the eye. Now the lower lashes are, well, for most people, they are sparser and shorter. This particular model has kind of spider lashes. Her lower lashes are actually longer than her upper. They're not as thick. They're a little bit thinner, not as many, but they are definitely long. Typically, most people's eyelashes are longer on top. And for that, you draw from the outside line, not the inside line. And it's the same thing. Towards the ear, it tilts towards the ear. Has a little curl. As you get to the center, it goes more straight down and in towards the nose, begins to curl in towards the nose. And now it's time to take a look and darken in a few places. A few of those lashes, a little bit more into the lid. This eye could be taken a lot further, especially as far as the shading goes, but I don't want to take all your time. I want you to spend some time thinking about yours. But you will notice the only thing around this eye really that's white are the whites of the eyes and the shine. The skin all has some sort of tone in it. Even if it's light, there is some in there. So you need to make sure that you are doing that when you do your portrait. It's not supposed to be just white paper with black outlines. Adding a little more value right there.